Welcome to your 28 Storms Tropical Weather Update for Wednesday, July 13th. We almost had a surprise tropical depression in the Bay of Campeche this morning. I'll go ahead and get more into that as I show you some of the animated satellite imagery. But now the probability of development has decreased to near 0%, and we're looking good in the rest of the Atlantic Basin today, along with the Eastern Pacific. This was the early morning service chart. As you can see, there's nothing organized out here in the Eastern Pacific. They did initialize a surface low in the southwest Bay of Campeche, and like I said, we'll talk more about that. But the rest of the Gulf, Caribbean, West Atlantic, they're all quiet right now. And we do have a weak tropical wave entering the far eastern Caribbean, but it's not showing any signs of development, and conditions are unfavorable out there. And the same can be said for a weak tropical wave near 30 degrees west out in the eastern Atlantic. This is the area of low pressure that sparked the alarm at the National Hurricane Center this morning. The early morning special outlook said that this particular system had about a 50% chance of becoming a tropical depression before making landfall in mainland Mexico, and it was also named 97L Invest, meaning that they were also running the tropical model suite on this particular low. And it definitely looked like it was worth watching, especially once you got into the central Bay of Campeche. It looked like it was beginning to develop a low-level circulation with convection developing right near the center. So it was definitely a good thing that they issued a special outlook. Of course, the good news is that the system has now begun to move inland, so it no longer has any additional time to develop, and that will be the last that we hear from this. But sure enough, this is just more evidence that you have to watch the monsoon trough over the Central American region, especially when it deviates any to the north or south, because it doesn't take much and it doesn't take long for it to possibly spin up brief tropical cyclones near land. Here is the most recent and more regional view of the tropics, and as you can see, that area of low pressure is now beginning to move inland, so we don't have any worries there, although it will be providing very heavy rainfall in this region of Mexico, so be on guard for any potential flash flooding. And you can see that convection also spreading inland on the latest infrared. Unfortunately, in the rest of the tropics, we don't see much convection or organized thunderstorm activity, and that's thanks to a lot of wind shear being continuously present throughout much of the western half of the basin. And that can also be said for much of the central and eastern Atlantic, where we don't have any organized systems out there this afternoon. The eastern Pacific is in a very similar state today. We see a lot of disorganized convection, but once again, nothing organizing anytime in the near future. However, as we will notice in the latest model guidance, we're going to have to continue to watch this area of disorganized convection associated with the monsoon trough. A lot of the models are beginning to latch onto the possibility of development either first off in the southwest Caribbean or eventually spreading into the far northeast Pacific. So this will be the hot spot over the next few days. The 12Z Canadian model quickly develops an area of low pressure just to the east of Nicaragua before spreading it into the far northeast Pacific just to the south of the Mexican coastline. The 12Z GFS is also developing an area of low pressure in the southwest Caribbean, and in fact it develops it into a tropical storm before it begins to push into the eastern Pacific. The often conservative 12Z UK Met is even developing an area of low pressure right here, and it's also lowering the surface pressures in the eastern Pacific simultaneously. The NOGAPS, although not very reliable, is also part of the model consensus that is lowering the pressures here even more across Central America. This is the average of the GFS ensemble members, and apparently the majority of them also agree with the operational GFS that a broad area of low pressure will begin to develop in the extreme southwest Caribbean as early as within the next 2 to 3 days. The European ensemble average, although not as strong, is also picking up on the same low feature. The operational version of the 12Z ECMWF is not as aggressive on developing an area of low pressure. If anything, it continues to focus much of the energy well out into the eastern Pacific and quickly ejects it off toward the west, although it does show a continued presence of below normal low pressure here across much of Central America. This is the latest NCEP view of the GFS run, and you can see fairly quickly an area of low pressure begins to develop in the far southwest Caribbean. We're now looking at late Friday afternoon, and this low continuously develops all the way until it begins to run into Nicaragua, and then as you can see it continues to strengthen or re-strengthen in the far northeast Pacific as it becomes a more organized tropical cyclone, until apparently it begins to run into some unfavorable conditions in the 5 to 6 to 7 day time frame. So that is the abbreviated edition of this tropical weather outlook for Wednesday. Elsewhere in the tropics, the models were developing a very weak area of low pressure near the Georgia-South Carolina coast, but they've really backed off on that, so we're not expecting anything whatsoever to look at in the western Atlantic. The models have also backed off on a couple of the tropical waves that were taking off the coast of Africa within the next 7 days, so we're also looking clear in the central and eastern Atlantic. So it all comes down to the extreme southwest Caribbean and eastern Pacific for any potential development within the next 3 to 6 days. As of right now, it's really hard to say exactly what's going to happen because a lot of land interaction will be in play, but areas both to the east and west of Nicaragua will be the main area to watch. And we will keep you informed here at 28storms.com. We'll have another video posted by tomorrow afternoon. And thanks for visiting us, and have a good day.